This time on Backshed, the Patina XE wagon is back and we're getting it ready for Rego. She made me work for it. Take a look. So if you haven't seen the XE from the previous episode, when we got her, she was pretty agricultural. We got her from a small town in western New South Wales, along with a couple of other cars, some of which you've seen and some of which are coming up shortly. So the first episode on the XE, we got her running, got her driving, lowered her down, clear coated the patina and put some 15B7 and 15B8 steely wheels on. But she's back in this episode because we're going to go a little bit further with her, because she's having a couple of little issues which are very consistent with having sat for a long time. So the issue she's having is a pretty simple one. She won't start. But with old school carbureted cars, you usually give it one squeeze on the throttle and then hit the key. No matter how much you pump that throttle, it just won't fire. In my head, I'm saying it's an accelerator pump. This is a Holly carburetor. Obviously it's upside down. That is an accelerator pump, and that is what's inside of there. So when you open the throttle, which is here upside down, you'll see that little shaft moves, which pumps that little diaphragm, and with the carburetor turned over, when you're opening the throttle, the accelerator pump injects a little bit of fuel into the throat and away you go. That's not happening. So the accelerator pump on this guy is down under there. So we'll knock the air cleaner off. So the first way I'm going to convince myself that that is an accelerator pump issue is act like an accelerator pump. See if it starts. And fired up instantly. And that's cold too, and it fired up instantly. So, but I'll show you the second way I'm convincing myself that is the accelerator pump that's the problem. But I think I might open the door and back him out into the open. If I blip the throttle just open, you'll hear it hesitate and not rev up. Like, hear the hesitation, you actually see it in the tacho. That's as I open the throttle, it's getting air but no fuel. So I'll remove the rest of that air cleaner, get that off, and pull that accelerator pump off and just see what's going on. So generally what will happen is one of two things. Either that diaphragm has split, they dry out over time, and they work for a short period of time when the new fuel comes along. But the constant motion eventually splits the diaphragm. The second thing that can happen, and I think that might be the case on this one, is the evaporated fuel that clogs tanks and filters blocks the little orifice that the fuel travels in to the accelerator pump. There's definitely signs of fuel in there. Now I've removed that and I've just fired the car up. And see how there's just a tiny little drip there? That should be getting quite a constant source of fuel, so I'll just shut him off. Now you can probably hear me better. That should be getting quite a decent stream of fuel, because that diaphragm needs to keep getting replenished every time you blip the throttle. If you're around town, you're on off. Well, that should be getting enough fuel to refill this little diaphragm. And if you look at that diaphragm, that's on the piss. It's off to one side. So I would say after years of sitting, it's actually dropped down and hardened. So that's probably not injecting enough fuel, and it's definitely not getting enough fuel. So I think we've got a combination of two things. That one's half rooted and that's half rooted. So that's together, they're fully rooted. So we'll give that a good solid blowout with some compressed air. We probably should pull the bowl off it, but I'll take my chances with that for now. We'll blow him out. I'll see if I got one of them in the rebuild kit that we had in Poppy. So I'll turn my old mate on. Probably a cheeky way of doing it, but I'm going to get my little blower and blow out that port that leads into the accelerator pump area, whatever you want to call it. I'm just going to blow it out and see if we can't get a better stream of fuel in there. I'll fire that and see if the float level will rise, and hopefully more will flow out. Nope, no success. It's still the same amount of fuel coming out. We might go a little deeper into this carburetor, maybe pull the lid off. So what I might do is just undo the top couple of bolts and just lift that lid off. I think that choke will have to come off too. There's maybe 6, 2 there, 2 there, 2 there. Lift that lid off and just see that bowl isn't absolutely full of garbage. Now all I've done is undone the screw that goes in there for the choke and there for the choke housing. That's just loose sitting there, and a couple of bolts around the top there, and now that's, and the fuel line of course at the front there, and that's going to lift off and just come off to the side if that choke comes out of the way. Like that. That's the float there. That rises up and down to regulate the height of the fuel level in the bowl. And that's the bowl. That doesn't look great. So we'll clean all that out and just see what's at the bottom of that bowl. So have a look in there. That is just like slurry. Look at that. So there's a little hole just at the end of that pointer there, and that's where it's going to take the fuel in and comes out into the accelerator pump. So we can flush all this stuff out. We might even pull these jets and clean these jets out, flush that bowl out, flush that hole out, and then we should have constant fuel to that accelerator pump. And then we'll pop a new diaphragm in it because that one's a bit mongy, and we'll see how we go. Jets are actually pretty good. They're not blocked, so I'll spray them off and put them back in. Watch me wear this shit in the face. I think we're going to go a bit deeper. There's another diaphragm out here at the front. Doesn't seem to be letting fuel in where it should. That spring just went gone. I'll probably have to play that back in slow-mo so I can actually find where that spring went. Great, because the rebuild kit doesn't come with that spring. I just assumed it went that way. So we've got a bit of a curveball. I found the rebuild kit. I've got the front diaphragm in, and that's the old one, which doesn't look buggered, but I replaced it anyway because I had it there. But wouldn't you know it, the one piece of that gasket kit that's used is the accelerator pump diaphragm. What? A used part in a rebuild kit? No, let me explain. This isn't a kit I just bought. If you remember back in episode 13, I found this gasket kit in the back of the XC sedan that was with the XC wagon. And I'd say it's had a similar drama because the only bit that's been used out of that kit was the bit that I needed. Anyway, let's get on with it. That's the Mongy one. It's off-centered. That's the one that came out. And this is the one that was in the kit, which clearly that's not new. So I'd say that was replaced. However, that's not perforated, and it's got more movement in it, more flexibility than that one. So I'm going to put that one in. Although it's not new, I'll put it in, see if it fixes the problem, and then surely I'll just order another one before I forget. Surely. Either that or that'll go in, it'll fix the problem and I'll forget, and that's where it'll stay. But either way, this is going in. And again, that gasket's not too bad, but it's just got one little break in it. So in with the new one. Why not? I've got it. Righto. I'll wind her over, get some fuel into it. Oh, fuel on. Well, it started, but clearly the bottom of that air cleaner's a tiny bit close to the fan. I think that kit came with that too. I'm on a roll today. I'll just fire it now that's not in the fan. Did you see that air cleaner reinstall itself? So if I blip the throttle now, enough for me. Righto, let's get on to something else. So when I was putting the air cleaner back together and that sort of thing, I idled him, got him warm. While it's on the hoist, I may as well chuck it up in the air and change the oil. Okay, so we ditched the oil, but I'll show you two things I've found down here. that ball joint, although the ball joint feels alright, that dust boot is completely split and there's no grease left in him, so he might feel fine now, but with no grease it won't last long. And same on the other side. So I'll get them ordered. These bottom ones are right. That one's actually new. That one's full of grease. Anyway, I'll get him down off the hoist, we'll get them ordered, and I'll show you the next couple of jobs. They're cosmetic. So oil's changed, tranny's checked, carburetor's sorted. Well, we'll see. Ball joints are ordered. So now we're going to move on to a cosmetic thing. I love the way this thing came out with the clean looking wheels and that sort of thing. It really did come up good, but it has sort of made the interior look a little bit grubby. You see in the seats there's a bit of a stain, and on that far one there, and the console's a bit dirty. And this seat could be a little better. There's no holes in it, but it could definitely be cleaner. Bit of a stain there. And the carpet, I'm pretty sure it used to be blue. It's kind of looking grey now. So we'll start here up front, we'll get the two fronts out, start getting the console out, and then work our way back till this carpet all comes out. The undoing bolts that are going right through the floor, get under there first and wire wheel the ends of the thread, WD the ends of the thread, because otherwise you'll get halfway out and they'll lock up with all the dirt and you'll start calling yourself names like or sometimes even worse than that. So I'm moving along pretty well. Front seat's out, back seat's unbolted. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, you've heard me say it before, but label everything. Even write yourself little notes if something comes out a bit funky in a certain order. We're ready to pull the carpet out. I've actually decided to ditch it, mainly for that. It's just got a massive big burn hole when someone's dropped their cigar or something and she's just melted the carpet there, but she's not great in other areas, and I genuinely think this would be the sort of one where you'd pressure clean it, it'd look good, you put it in, a week later the stains start coming back. Carpet's out and he's dirty but really solid. Little bit of surfacey stuff starting here and there around those bolts, but nothing crazy. I'll clean that up, fish oil all that and treat it, but essentially this has still got factory paint on it, factory sound deadener. She's good. She's really good actually. I'll get started into pressure cleaning these guys, get them clean so they can start drying, clean up the console and the trims. So while the interior is out drying and everything come up alright, console's a bit faded so it still looks different colours, but But another quick job I want to do, well, I don't know how quick it's going to be, but all this blistering tint, all that's got to come off. I don't know if there's an easy way or a quick way, but it's every window except for this one, because that's the one that was broken in the first video, and we've replaced that guy. All I'm going to do is get a brand new razor blade, and I say brand new so that the edge is nice and clean and you've got less chance of scratching it. Sit him flat. And just start peeling them off like that. Now it is going to leave residue and shit behind. You just have to go around with Prepsol or something like that, a wax and grease remover, and remove all the gum after. It's going to be a little bit painful, but I'll stop talking, I'll get into it, and it'll be done before you know it. Maybe. So that's it for today. It was a good day. It's beer time. So interior's all stripped down, pressure cleaned up. It's out there drying, and we're in for a couple of hot days, which is a bit of a change. We've had nothing but rain lately, so much so that we don't live that close to the river, but we had waterfront views about 2 weeks ago. Sorry about the wind, but get a go at this. There's the poor old shed, and there's the lake that's usually about 1 kilometre away. With the hot weather back, that'll give the interior a chance to dry out. Carpet's ordered, ball joints turned up, so that's what we're into first thing in the morning. There's a couple other little things I'll need for rego. The windscreen washers don't work. There's a bit of wiring hanging out under the dash. The tint was the pain in the ass today, but I'm shallow. I'm already over it. It was a bit of hard work, but in fact, I've also got a bad memory, so I'll probably buy something else with shit tint very, very soon. Anyway, that's it for now. I'll see you in the morning. So we've got the ball joints, and one thing I like about these FALCON ones is they bolt in, they're not press in. So we'll get that guy up on the hoist, get the wheels off, and we'll start whipping them in. So we've done a fair bit of this stuff before, but I'll just go through exactly what we're going to do. This is the issue here. That rubber is all perforated and busted. The ball joint itself is actually kind of okay, but to get him out, all it is, you don't need to undo any of this shit. It is literally just that nut there, and there's 3 little bolts, 1, 2, 1 over the other side. So the split pin or cotter pin or whatever you want to call it, that's out first. That's this guy, and we're going to loosen this guy, heat this, and just use a ball joint separator just to squash that down. The other thing is maybe try and crack this nut before you go heating this point, because if you heat this whole guy up to try and expand this nut to undo it, and it happens to release the ball joint, everything's going to spin and it makes it a pain. So as hard as it might be, give this a crack before you heat anything. They come off pretty easy actually. So I'm now going to heat this section here. And one thing with these Falcons is you don't have to worry about the spring assembly, and there's no pressure going to push that down. So if we compress that and it releases, it's not going to try and hit the floor like a HQ or something like that. The spring on it, HQ's in here, so this is going to have force traveling down. This won't move because that control arm's already sitting on the subframe there, so all that's going to stay in place. We just have to release this guy. However, I don't want this to drop too far because you've got these brake lines, so I'm going to put zip ties maybe around there, hold that together so you can crack it, but you're not going to get all the weight hanging on this bloke because it's pretty old. There's that compressor. Who would have thought? I've got to learn to turn the bastard off, although I'm using it, so I sort of need it. So I guess we'll just keep having our little fight. I'm just going to get this guy in like that, but I'm actually going to sit the nut back on. It was probably a better idea if I did it before I heated it up, just to give this bottom section a bit more to grab onto, like that, just so it's got a bit more surface area to sit on. I'm going to do it by hand. I'm not going to get the rattle gun into it. We'll just see how it goes. And at this point it's just going to sit on that nut, and then I'll get the zip ties in around it when I go to get the nut off. But we'll see if this wants to pop off. Seems everything's moving, but is it just bending? I don't know. Is that just bending or what? Try not to catch everything on fire too much. A little bit's fine. Gonna give him a bit of persuasion. So here we go now, a bit more heat. Yeah, that's going. And that is really hot. Like really hot. Anyway, so we'll undo these guys so the ball joint's free, and see if we can't just move him across and out and piss him off. Yep, still hot. Who'd have thunk it? The smell of burnt ball joint rubber and grease isn't super pleasant. Have to jack that spring up after all. I did assume that would swing away better. I could undo them, then it'd swing away, but you know what? Oh, hang on. Turns out I will use my zip tie. Hang on. So I'll zip tie him like that. There you go, did end up using my zip ties. Just so it's not yanking on that fella. And there he is. And, you won't believe it, it's still hot. Ready? I'm going to give him a sharp push and try to come underneath this edge. Just like that. See if we can't get a few of these bolt holes to line up. Got new bolts and everything. Just looking at that, it won't be long on that sway bar bush will need doing too. Should be right. Should be right for now. Now, see what I'll do before I do that up completely. One thing I forgot. I'm going to mark where the hole is. So I'm a castellated nut, and it's called castellated because look at the top of it, it looks like a castle. Well, maybe that's not the reason, but I think it is. I'm gonna mark it like that so I don't have to look for where the hole is. It's always hard to see once the nut's on there. About now's when you need to line up that line. That ought to do it. Through he goes. And the other side is rinse and repeat. However, don't forget on the back side, get a little grease nipple. Don't know how well you can see it, but there's actually a hole there that opens straight into the grease nipple port. Now I didn't bother putting that nipple in first because I thought when I go to bounce this under that control arm, I thought I'd knock that off for sure. But you can still get at it now to pop him in there. Fill him up with grease. Is there anything that white steelies don't look good on? But we're not putting white steelies on the queue. She's coming up soon. She's getting used as a drying rack at the minute, but that's still cool. I've got bigger plans for this one. Anyway. So ball joints are done, she's back on the ground, and I've got the old bolts and that. Don't throw this shit away. Any car, guy or girl, is gonna have one of these. That's the old parts bucket. That is the handiest tool you can sometimes have in your shed. So that's the ball joints done, and I'll show you the old ones when the dust boots are split, why they fail regos. If you can see in there, it just lets dirt in around the joint, and that one's not too bad, but when they start to surface rust, they deteriorate really quickly. So as much as it's a pain in the ass, it's probably for your own safety. Ooh, safety. But it's probably for your own safety so they don't go falling apart when you're driving down the road. So they're done. That only took about an hour and a half, so it's not a massive job. As I say though, I do like the bolt-in ones because you don't have to get the control arm out, deal with the springs, then press the bush in or press the ball joint in. There's probably other prettier ways to do that, but they're in, it worked. So moving on, we'll take a look at some lights and bulbs and things like that now, see where we're at with electrics. Then I've got the washers to do, and I don't know, see what else I see along the way. Right, let's get into that. We'll get into some lights. everything's working except left-hand parker, number plate light, and one reverse light. So this isn't looking that great, it's a bit old and shitty, and these two are the number plate lights, here and here. If you saw, I had one working and one not working, but I just swapped those bulbs, and that one is still working and that one's not working, but that bulb was working there. So I'm gonna put it down to, inside there is filthy. So all I'm gonna do is get an emery board, pinch it from your other half out of the bathroom. No doubt there's some down there with some nail stuff. Get in there and clean that up. Alright, so I'll see if they both work now. Yep, you beauty. Good on it. The other one that didn't work, and I can't get out. Come out, you stupid. Oh, that's ridiculous. And this will be that brittle. If I pull that, I'm gonna snap it for sure. Come on, there you go. There you go. So that bulb doesn't look buggered either. See if he works. Put him in reverse. Maybe this shag. Hot. So that's the connection as well. You just saw that was working in that side. Yep, so that's connection as well, because that bulb's still good. So I'll just work on that a little more and we'll get this one to work. So to take a look at this parker now, and you can see there's moisture inside of this headlight, so I guarantee I can tell you what's going to be. I've pulled that cover off the back of it, removed the main globe plug and then the main globe, and look at that housing, it's just corroded. So that's the main power to the parker. If I check that with a test light, so I'll grab a test light, just pick up on an earth. That's obviously an earth that's running there somewhere to the wiring. And then if I put it on the main body, I've got nothing. So I've got power there at the plug, that's the wire running to it. So I'm just going to pull that wire off there with power. I'm going to clean up all that, and then pull that globe and clean up, if I can get it out without busting it, and clean up all that. That's all shitty. The bulb was getting power intermittently, which meant the ground wasn't great, so that's actually sprayed with hydrochloric acid and water, just mixed, just a tiny bit, and mixed up, and I'll keep cleaning that. But you see how that's cleaned that right up. This bit here is all clean, and that's the bit that was the issue, the earth. Don't do it on your concrete though, because it'll eat your concrete. But that come up really nice, and again, that's hydrochloric acid and water mixed at about 4 to 1, 4 parts water, 1 part acid, and just spray it on, let it sit, and hose it off. Right, I'll get him in, get these lights working, and get on with some other shit. So I'll start to get rid of a bit of this excess wiring. And what do you reckon about this? Should I leave that little beauty there or remove it? And it looks like it's had one there too. There's a screw hole there. So they're blocks. Have a look at the width of them. Oh, Christ. Obviously didn't have screws long enough to go all the way through, so we've screwed one end to the other. I got the job done. So that's the light sorted. She's a little bit dull, that one's a little bit water affected. The parkers are working, indicators are working. She's running quite good now. I did get rid of that bit of ugly wiring that was under there. There's still a plug for the console there and the speaker wire, but try to ignore that. I didn't want to put you through too much wiring, because if you did see the F100 video, man was the wiring shit on that. I won't put you through it on this one. It was pretty simple. So here's a rare one for you. It's 12 o'clock and I think I'm done. I'm literally now waiting for carpet, but it's a Sunday, so it's definitely not turning up. And I only ordered it yesterday when we stripped the interior out. The interior still needs plenty of time to dry, and I've got a couple of days at work, so it might actually work well. The carpet should be here by Wednesday. The interior will definitely be dry if we have days like we got right now. And aside from little things like maybe cleaning the glass or something like that, I really am just waiting. So I'm going to give myself the Arvo off, which is a total lie. I don't have the Arvo off. I'm going to start ordering parts for the white HQ wagon. Ironically, carpet is one of them. And that'll determine which is next. If Mucus's 9-inch turns up, then I guess he'll be next. If the white wagon stuff turns up, then it'll be next. So either way, HQ is next episode. That's it for now. I'll see you in the morning. Although technically it'll be Wednesday. You won't know. I'll see you in the morning. So, carpet turned up this morning. I'm straight off night shift, so I can't remember what to say. So let's stop talking and get into it. Let's get this interior in. So just laying the carpet in, and if you've been here before, you remember one of the tips was use a soldering iron to find your little holes. That way you can poke it through the hole, wiggle it around, it makes a perfect little hole for your seatbelt holes and also for your seat holes. But the one thing you got to remember is turn it on, because otherwise it won't do shit. So we're back on the hoist. The last thing I want to do before rego inspection is, when we first got the XC, the transmission worked. Everything worked well. I topped it up because it was low and it's got a leak. If you see that gasket there, there's actually weeping around the edge. It's a slow leak, but it's leaking. All in all, it's not that bad. That magnet's got a little bit of something on it, but I don't know how long that's been since it's been serviced, so it's not actually that bad. It was pretty red. I guess I topped it up, so it was mostly new fluid, but I expected to see a lot more clutch material. I've definitely seen worse. Anyway, we'll get this gasket off, which is obviously going to be quite easy, and clean him up and get the new one on. So with cork gaskets, it's important, don't over tighten them. The easiest way to destroy a brand new gasket is over tighten it. And I generally use this stuff. It's very good stuff. Just put it around both surfaces. You don't need a lot of it, just a real light smear around it. Stick your gasket down and then put some on the tranny and you're right. Can I still call it a tranny? Whatever. You know when you say something and instantly think, why did I say that? Like this. The last thing I want to do before rego inspection is, because now I've got this to contend with. So I go to run it just to check the transmission level and then that. What the fuck? So you think you're done, and cars are the gift that just keeps giving. That's definitely valve train, whether it be a collapsed lifter, a bent push rod, or a rocker. I don't know. We'll get the cover off and have a look. It was running perfectly when I shut it off. I went to start it. Started a bit funny, and that. All right, so stop talking. Get into it. So the bit that worries me about this, it's not like we were driving along and something's developed. Didn't actually do anything. Turned it off, started it again, tapping. Don't know. We'll just get this cover off and hopefully it's obvious. I just label them so I don't have to frig around with firing order. I'll cut that and get those bolts out. So you've heard the term can of worms. This is starting to feel like it can definitely be that, because the edge of that rocket cover is sort of tucked under the edge of that carburetor. So unless this comes up and slides over, the whole carburetor might have to come off. Please come off in one piece. Please come off first, but then come off in one piece. Have a look there. That bit of the cover is under, I don't know, some diaphragm there, so if I can't get that up and over, the carby might have to come off. I reckon I can get that diaphragm off without taking the whole carby off. If I can get to those two little screws. Oh, that is tight. Get them up. Never ever come undone, ever. Not going well at this point. Not at all. In your face, idiot. Just a little O-ring there I've got to not lose. Take a look at this, and if you look at that one, and there's the push rod, and I'll get you right in here, there's the rocker, and there's the push rod. So I better pull that rocker, just see what's going on with that push rod. How that can sometimes happen, if they've been sitting a long time and the valve sticks, it creates clearance and then you can jump a push rod out, or yeah, anyway, we'll have a look what caused it. It really isn't happy. So where exactly do you get a 4.1 push rod? So I've had a look around and I've got small block Chev, I've got big block Chev, but they're way shorter than that. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to knock a good one off, take the push rod because it's hard to get the exact length of that noodle, and I'm going to go for a quick drive as a bit of a long shot, but anyway, we'll grab a good one out and we'll go for a quick drive. So this was my long shot. I remembered when I bought this Cortina, and yep, it's a total different engine, but it's an earlier Ford 6. I thought it might have been the same. Thought it might have been the same length, and I knew there's push rods, but fail. They're different. Anyway, back to the drawing board. Cortina will be coming up soon. So I've got one other long shot. There's a mechanical workshop about 12 k's from home, and they do work on a bit of older stuff. I sort of, they've maybe swapped an engine, maybe they got a dead engine out the back. I can at least pinch one, then get a new set, then take a push rod back. Yeah, anyway, a couple of minutes up the road. Failing that, I don't know, we just have to order some and wait. We don't do wait well though, not well at all. Guess I've got no choice. So my long shot pays off. I go into the local shop, see a mate named Graham, and Graham says, no, I wouldn't have one, but this bloke will, and thank you, Chris. I can't thank you enough. Chris didn't just give me one, he actually gave me two. And lucky he did. Because I rushed home, whacked it in, pulled the rocker down, thought I'll just wind this thing over and just make sure everything's moving the way it should. And no, it wasn't. It actually bent a second push rod. Only ever so slightly, but you can see the top of that one's bent there. But that's just from winding it, right? Which tells me it's brutally obvious. It's not a stuck lifter. It didn't dislodge under revs or anything. That's a stuck valve. And generally, you spray a bit of WD or something at the base of the valve, give it a bit of a tap, and you can generally free them up. Well, I can tell you, that thing is stuck like I haven't seen one stuck. So from this point, the only thing I can do is knock that valve spring off and just have a look what's going on. I don't know if it's an inner spring has broken or I don't know. We'll get the spring off. So we'll actually knock that plug out, wind that cylinder to top dead center. It's the one we want. And we'll knock this plug out. You might not be able to see it in camera, but you can actually see the top of the piston. So we're just going to bump that over until it comes to the top, and I'll show you how I'm going to tell if it's roughly at the top. It doesn't have to be crazy accurate. So we're just going to get something soft like a zip tie, right? Or a plastic straw or anything like that, and just sit it on the top of the piston. That'll tell you how far down in that cylinder he is. And the next thing we're going to do is make a tool to fit into that spark plug hole to put compressed air in there to hold the valves shut. But the piston at the top of the bore is just in case I happen to push down on the valve and the compressed air is not enough to hold. Okay, so this is what I've made up. There's the spark plug, and I scrounged around the old fittings bucket, which is just old leftover fittings, bits that come with gauges and stuff like that, and I found that fitting, and I think it was a transmission cooler adapter, and I found that guy, which, so all I'm going to do now, and just a bit of hose in between. I'm just going to tie it off with wire around there and there, just so it doesn't blow off, and that'll screw in place of that spark plug, and that'll allow me to fill that cylinder with compressed air. Yeah, I know, the compressed air is probably overkill. It's got a stuck valve and the piston's high in the cylinder. Call it habit, call it insurance, call it whatever you want, but the one time you don't do it and you drop that valve and can't quite retrieve it is the one time that wave of misery comes over you, to the point where you can't drink that misery away. And I'll screw that in, and I'll look around for about 20 minutes for a valve spring compressor, but I reckon I know where that is. I think a mate and I used it on his Cleveland, and so I kind of had to make a tool for that too. So this is the amazing red neckery I've come up with. I'm going to bolt that to the rocker post, and then I'm going to push down on the old spanner, and hopefully that's going to expose those little retainers and collets, but we'll give it a crack and see where we end up. So with the spring off, I found it's got one valve spring only. It's a single spring. There's not a second spring that's busted and jammed up, but the valve stem seal on this is very hard, thick plastic, and it looks like it's stuck to the valve. And as it's been traveling up and down and getting hot, it's actually jammed up in between the valve and the valve guide and stuck it solid. So I just got my tool underneath my valve with the retainer and the collet in there so it can't completely drop out, but remember the piston's up, and I've just had to sort of tap it to go down, but it's starting to free up, so I can almost push it down and lift it back up, and I'm just going to work at that. Yeah, that came up heaps easier then. Right, so this is, it's almost free now. And I can explain why that's doing that. I'll show you. Now I'm going to take all this off out of the way so you can actually see what's happening. But these valve stem seals are actually plastic, and sometimes when they dry and they harden, they'll stick to the valve. We'll have a look at this, and I'll use this zip tie to point it out. But can you see all that crap there? That's coming out from around the valve. So see the garbage up here? I reckon what's happened is that plastic valve stem is stuck around the base of that valve, and as that started heating up and moving up and down, it's got caught in around the guide because that was stuck fast. So that's eventually stuck itself hard, then bent the push rod. So I'm just going to work that up and down and free it up. I'm actually kind of glad I made that tool now, because if I had a regular spring compressor, you wouldn't be able to be sort of working it like that. I think, see, there's still more plastic coming out of that. See if I can rotate that valve. Righto, thing is now I've got to go and find a valve stem seal off something that will actually do the job on this motor. So this is the, I guess, the gasket stockpile, and how this sort of happens is every time you buy something, it's always got parts in the boot or in the floor. There's intake and exhaust gaskets, but I'm pretty sure with one of these Cleveland sets, and I hope it's Ford stuff. So that's a tranny, more, can't call them trannies anymore, but that's another exhaust gasket. More exhaust, another transmission hand gasket. Yeah, there we go. I'm lucky I got two sets. I think that's the Cleveland set I was thinking about. Yeah, there's 16, one, two, there's 16 there, so that's a V8 set, but what the hell is that? 2, 4, 6, 8, that's a 4-cylinder set off something. But I'll try them. So we'll get all this back together, stem seals on, go valve spring on next. Then your spring retainer, then my amazing tool, now I don't think I'll need compressed air this time, because that valve stem is actually, the seal is actually quite tight, and it's sitting at the base of the valve, so it's holding the valve up. But if it does drop, then I'll just compress it and pop him back up, but we'll see how we go. Half got him, but I'm going to spin him around. There we go. If you're ever doing that sort of shit, give him a bit of a thump just to settle that collet in around the base of that valve. So the collet is that little clip in there, or the valve lock that fits in those ribs in the top of the valve, and that's your retainer. It retains the spring once the lock is in place. But give it a, just to bed it in. Now it's rockers back on, cover back on. That should be it. Oh shit, I said it again. Shut up, idiot. Alright, I'm done with surprises. Let's just go and get some rego. This is is not a sign of confidence. So that's the XE. In my unprofessional opinion, she's officially done. She's gone from parked for years in a row of cars to wearing number plates again and cruising down the road. And the more I drive it, the happier the motor seems to get. But this one is a little bit bittersweet because she'll probably have to make way. If you saw our previous episode, the Wrecking Yard episode, we did buy a lot of cars. And so we've got a ton of rescues coming up. And don't forget to visit backshed.net.au. If you can show your support there, that'll go a long way to getting a lot of these cars running and driving quicker. And one of my old favourites is back soon. Mucus's 9-inch turned up, so he's back. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video and thanks for watching. So if you're wondering, do you remember that diaphragm or did you just forget about it? Actually, I couldn't get one. I had to buy a whole kit, so we went one better. She got a full rebuild. I always get all kinds of friggin' nervous the first time you drive something, you know, on a decent distance. But, thanks train. There's heaps of shit there I've forgotten about. Compressed air is not enough to hold it open. Fucking birds. That's hard on my ass. Hang on, I'll get another chair. And if I push on it too hard, those fucking birds, fair dinkum. Fuck right off, birds. Foot pounds, that is. Why am I reading Newton meters then, you dickhead? I love summer, but it brings these bastards here.